All right, so we're after the holidays. Sorry this video took so long. We don't usually do ATV stuff. We do that kind of stuff. So just wanted to finish the video off, or the series. I think I did 4 short videos on this. Kolpin switchblade plow. Basically, you can shrink this to 48 inches. I have it set up at 60. They just have another set of holes where that all slides in, and it just bolts up differently. Now, I've used it a few times, so pros and cons. The biggest con on this particular bike, and it's not the fault of the plow or the bike, it just is what it is. We set the winch up where it needs to be, and as you can see, I'm missing a piece of plastic. Well, where the winch is now, it's exactly where a Polaris winch would be. That is just an $89 2,000-pound winch. Don't know the name, but you know, we got that at a place called Canadian Tire, which is like used to be a tire and automotive store, which became a hardware automotive store, which is a little bit of a big box hardware, but they still do automotive and all that other stuff. At any rate, it's like a giant Pep Boys within a Rona for you guys down south. So clearance winch, 89 bucks. Seems to work like a champ. The plow takes about a day to bolt everything together and get it under there and set it up. It works good. It pushes good. 2017 Polaris 450 HO. Now, one thing about these 450s, they actually have a 499cc. So don't be afraid of buying one of these thinking it's too small. If you live in the desert and you like to do 80 miles an hour, this is not the bike for you. But if you live in Ontario, Canada, and you like going trail riding, this will do 80 all day long, probably more. 80 going down a gravel road, this thing starts to shuffle. So does the 570, so does the 850. If you go with the 570, you get 1 inch more tire, which gives you about ½ inch ground clearance more. Same transmission, same diffs, all the same parts. It's just a slightly bigger engine. And I wouldn't doubt that it's the same engine with a bigger head and piston, because they probably just took their 570 and shrunk the top end down. Now, one thing Polaris advertises with these bikes, these 450 HOs with the 499cc engine, I don't know why they didn't just call this their new 500, but at any rate, it has a little more bottom end and mid-range grunt. So if you have a 570, it's a much faster bike producing more horsepower, but it does all that at a much higher RPM. Now, we have I think it's the same year of this in a Polaris Ace with a 570. And if I drive the Ace and then drive this, I can tell right away. This seems to have more torque down low, where the Ace, even plowing, you got to kind of rev it up. I have that out at, it's out at Dad's place, and Dad's been using it to plow, and it plows just fine. But I notice with this bike, I can plow a lot slower with more grunt. This thing's like a little dozer. But when you get it up, and right on Polaris' own videos, you gain about 10 miles an hour with the 570. This will do more than 80. I don't know how much more it'll do. Now, 80 is in kilometers. I am in Canada. But most of the trails, if I hit 60, that's about as fast as you can go on a straight stretch that used to be train tracks in the trail system I'm on. Most of our trail system here, 30 is fast. You're usually doing between 10 and 20, you know, because the bush is rough. The faster trails, like I say, between 30 and 50, 55. I tend to cruise a lot in the big trails at about 55. So the 450 HO is plenty of bike. But like I say, because of that torque down low, and you're also going to be in low range plowing, this thing is more than capable enough to plow. Yet has enough torque it could probably hurt itself. So I'm pretty easy on my stuff. I think this will go good. Now the cons, there's definitely one, let's call it 2 cons. Because of where they located this winch, if I want the plow to come up, I know a lot of guys just go up and down a little bit, but if you want it to come up a decent height, I had to eliminate the hook and just run the cable direct so that I could get enough height you know, because I want to get quite a bit of height. If I'm pushing it over the bank, sometimes you get hung up. You want to be able to lift it and, you know, not get stuck. So one fix for that would be to cut that off, put a bar underneath this, and relocate this about 2.5, 3. Probably you could probably get that to go about 3 inches lower, which you would be able to put the hook back on. And the nice thing about that is then you can put one of those rubber stoppers that hits, because if you stop without the stopper, you're going to pull the hook right off. So I'm going to think about that later. Now the other thing we had to do, the battery is that way 1/2 inch, and what else? This way. We had to basically move it 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. And it was a pain in the butt. But because of how the brackets go with those bolts, we kind of had no choice. So this is where the first con comes. All that bracketry stays under the bike. Those pins right here come out, and that all falls off. Now for most people, you could leave those on and it probably wouldn't be an issue. But if you get in the hardcore stuff, it could be. For me, I'm not that worried about it. But it may solve 2 problems if I change something, which I'll explain now. If you look at this same exact plow set up on a different Polaris, such as a Razor 800, the universal bracket comes up to the front ahead of the A-arms. It puts your plow way out, and the cable goes on an angle. Now the cool thing about having that hard angle on the cable, instead of picking it straight up and down, is it allows a lot more length, so you can pull it up higher without your claw hitting. Now I don't want this to be way out, but you can't bolt it under the A-arms, so you're kind of stuck with where this goes. But, and this is where our cheap plow will still be cheap, but not as cheap as we were hoping. So the winch was $89 plus tax. The plow was $350 plus tax. I think it worked out to $496, taxes and all, in Ontario, Canada. So $500, we got a winch, we got a plow with all the junk to put it on, and it's on the bike. $500, you're snow plowing. But if you buy the dedicated Polaris plow, they've got a bracket that hooks onto these round tubes. And it kind of just hooks on, and then it goes up under the frame, and right where we have that square U-bolt dropping through, there's this oblong hole, and the Polaris bracket will hook, come up, and it locks into those holes. And then there's a little handle up here you can turn or pull that locks it to the bike. And then what happens is the plow hooks on up here in the middle someplace, which puts the Polaris plow way out. Now I don't want it way out, but at the same time, it ain't gonna hurt that it's out. The only thing is it puts more weight further ahead as far as leverage goes. But what I think I'm gonna do, they're $219 online. I think I'm gonna order the Polaris quick change bracket, and then I'm gonna take those brackets off the bike, and I'm gonna move them to about center of that bracket, weld them on. And what that'll do, it'll put my plow forward by about 8, maybe 9 inches, if that, maybe 6, 7 inches. It'll put it ahead a little bit. It'll give me more room with the cable. But the coolest thing is I'll be able to click, drop the plow, the harness, everything, unhook the winch, and drive my bike away. And then I'll have a usable winch with no brackets underneath. So at the end of the day, this whole setup with the plow is going to cost, what was it, $220, so with tax, maybe $240, plus the $500. So you're at about $750. Now that's Canadian money, so down in the States, that's $500-600. So still not a real big deal. If you got a newer bike anyway, that's not a lot to spend on the plow. The plows for these from Polaris are more than $1,000. You still got to buy the bracket, and then the other, like, it's all in pieces. So yeah, it's still going to be a lot cheaper, but I am going to buy that bracket and weld the two together. That way I can basically recreate that quick connect. At any rate, the way it is right now actually works totally fine. I'm going to, both products, the bike, the plow, good stuff. I've got no real complaints. It plows the yard good. I've had snow that was a little deeper and a little crappier than I'd like. And the one thing is, if you go from a truck to an ATV, or from like a farm tractor to an ATV, which is what I did. So, you know, the farm tractor with chains on it and calcium, basically it's like a small dozer. It's going to push whatever you push. I thought this would suck, but I got to be honest, it's fine. Now, it does take a little less snow at a time, mainly because of the width of the blade being 5 feet instead of 6 or 7. But goes back and forth a lot quicker, even if you're not going real fast. So, I mean, it's taken about the same or less amount of time to do it. So I'm going to give the plow a thumbs up. Now, if you had a machine where your winch was a little higher up in the middle, or the older machines where they were way up high or whatever, this thing would work perfect for you. Now, this same plow, like I say, when you set it up on a Razor 800 or 850 or whatever the Razors are, my aunt has one. She's got the exact same plow and harness on it, but that whole thing is about 1.5 feet forward and the plow is way out. But when you're sitting in the Razor, you're not up high, so you want to be able to see the plow way out there, so it kind of makes sense. And it's the exact same plow, and it works good. So whether it be this way on the bike or the other way on the Razor. So at any rate, it is what it is. It's still going to be a lot cheaper. It does work good. It's all steel, which is good for me, because if anything breaks or wears, I can just put a chunk in and weld it up. If I ever needed to do this again, would I consider building my own? I can do that kind of work. I don't know. You can just buy one and throw it on the bike. So depends what your time's worth, and you got to think about that. But like I say, the one thing that I think would rectify my few very minor gripes about this, if I want to disconnect that every year, I got to unbolt it, or do I spend the 2 and change, put the quick disconnect on, which is exactly what I'm going to do, and then we'll just hook this plow to that, modify it to work. Anyway, hope that was helpful to somebody. But if you can get this plow to work on your bike, go to it. Now, the caveat, if you didn't watch the other videos and you're only watching this video, if your bike has a winch, buy the plow, throw it on, hook it up, you're going to love it. But if you have a Polaris, you can see in here, I got a piece of angle iron in here, like so. We drilled holes to bolt it here and here. And then I took my universal winch plate that came with the winch, welded it on, and we put a plate here to make it stable. And on the other side, the plate actually goes underneath. And we did that to make sure that this would line up with the hole that's in the front of the Polaris cover. So if you can't cut and weld and stuff, you might want the Polaris winch. Something tells me that Polaris winch would probably be 3,000 or 4,500 instead of a 2,000 pound. However, the way the winch is made, the body of the winch slides back and bolts into that, or the bracket that comes off it. At any rate, easier to buy their thing and put it in. So again, what's your time worth? If you want a universal winch, just make sure you can do a bit of cobbling and weld something up. Thanks for watching. Cheers.